So, Karan, let's get the easy stuff out of the way right now. The easiest part of the book, right? Why is India obsessed by your sexuality? Easy.
Well, for some reason, as I said, the word conjecture is a word I use very often on my talk show. Well, that is because when people don't have final answers, they tend to kind of, browse around the topic always. And so have I. But in the book, I've said what I've felt the need to, and I've said it in a way that I felt I needed to express it. And there's really nothing more to say. So I think that every answer anyone's looking for is in the book.
You know, there are several moments in that book where you talk about people confronting you at airports, at parties, and saying the most gross things, the most insensitive things, and you come back to them is sassy but also a little sad. Why should anyone have to explain any aspect of their lives at all or defend it?
I think
Why?
people sometimes, when you're in the celebrity zone, I think people tend to sometimes just not know what to say. Like, I feel like when they encounter you, they either tend to overcompensate and say exceptionally polite things, or they'll say the most inappropriate things to you. I think anyone who's been in the celebrity space will tell you that you'll have people come and say the most overfamiliar things to you at times. And sometimes because they think that they own you, because you're in their living room on a daily basis, perhaps because of my television exposure, or the fact that one is around and all over the place, they feel they have an ownership over you. And sometimes that allows them to kind of cross the boundary of decency. And they'll say things that are inappropriate. And you'll have to stand there. Sometimes you can give a response back, which sometimes goes over their head, because it's not a straight-lined answer. And sometimes you use sarcasm, which also sometimes doesn't get a response. Sometimes all you do is just, like Shahrukh told me the other day, that now when people say things, he just nods. Because there's nothing else to say. Sometimes you just nod because people say the most bizarre things, and sometimes it's members of the fraternity, sometimes it's members of the media within the fraternity, sometimes it's random strangers at an airport, and you have to just deal with it. There's nothing you can do. You can't. At least I'm not the guy who's going to start getting into a fight, because I don't think I'll have the ability to handle it if I was at the receiving end. So I just let it pass.
May I share that one moment at the airport, which is in your book, so everyone's going to read it anyway,
right,
where a person comes up to you, his wife is with him, and he walks up to you and says to you, "So, are you a homo?"
Yeah.
And your response is, "Why? Are you interested?" And I thought that was just fabulous. That's, the aplomb and the tight slap that probably the man warranted.
Well, it was it was what came out, literally it just came out very, because I thought it was an exceptionally inappropriate thing. And the wife was clicking a photograph of mine while he was asking me this question. And he asked me, patting me on my back. It wasn't just a car. It was an overfamiliar pat. As if I had, we had dinner last night, and he decided to ask me this question early in the morning. And it's happened to me. It's also in the book when I was on the launch of a channel, and it was an early morning breakfast interview where I was asked an inappropriate question, and I was completely shocked that we were on national television. Of course, it never made it because they realized that it was completely wrong. Fortunately, it wasn't a live telecast. But sometimes you just wonder whether people just don't have the sensitivity or the decency, or use language to ask a question that may not come across inappropriate. There are various ways. I'm a member of the media myself. I host a talk show. And I know sometimes when you want to kind of ask something, you can circumvent it with words and vocabulary. You don't suddenly just go out there and ask in the pretense of being completely candid, or then irreverent, or perhaps overfamiliar.
But the surprising part of the book, towards the end of the book, when you talk about maybe going on to dating sites, I found that fascinating, that you went on to an elite dating site and a date was set up for you in Tokyo. And you said, why should I go to Tokyo to meet someone? How did you get onto these dating sites?
That's
why?
a story in itself. Sometimes you have to kind of scratch the surface to find, what's not immediately available. So there are various ways and means I think people sometimes have to kind of look at. When you're single and 44, you'll probably go through every kind of possible available
I
opportunity.
thought that was fantastic because most people would not admit it.
I would have actually
They'd
liked
be
to give the
addicted, but they
name.
won't.
It was a selective. I would have liked to give the name, but they're so exclusive and quiet and have full, like, disclosure issues. So that's why I didn't give that information. Not that anything's come out of it, and I'm not a success story of their agency at all. In fact, I'm a rather, apparently 2 out of 3 people succeed, and I'm that one who failed.
You also talked about 3.5 failed relationships. 1 true love, and I think 3.5 failed relationships. You've spoken about it with a great deal of some amount of regret, but compassion, empathy about why they didn't work out.
Well, they were not any relationships. They were mostly unrequited love situations, which is great fodder for a filmmaker, not so great for a personal life. Yeah, I mean, I suppose that comes from your sense of indulgence and over-expectation. Sometimes you tend to expect from quarters that you know won't deliver, and that invariably happens when, and that's what I call indulgence. Is like if I had a pragmatic approach to love, which is not possible with me, I would possibly have been in a long-standing relationship. But I've always desired what I know I can't have.
You also talked about divorce being the new marriage. And throughout the book, there is a kind of a strand which keeps going back to infidelity. And it's like almost a semi-obsessive aspect of your creative process to deconstruct everybody's marriages and to see who's cheating, who's lying, who's living a lie.
Because truly, in my experience, I think there's much ado about fidelity and infidelity. I think sometimes true emotion and relationships can go beyond those. And being a single bystander, you tend to be so close to so many relationships and marriages. And in my experience, and I say this, and I don't have any kind of, with all kinds of moral policing on my statement, I'm sure, but I don't think infidelity is a deal breaker. I don't believe
it's
it
not
is.
a deal breaker.
No, I don't think so. And I feel like it's very individualistic. It's as per each one's life. And I feel like I'm not judgmental about it at all. And I'm not sure if I'm capable of complete fidelity, even if I was deeply in love.
But in your film, when you're talking about the process where you were going to shoot the scene, very interesting conversation that you had with Shahrukh, when all of you had second thoughts whether to go all the way and show Rani and him in bed or suggest that they've actually had sex, where you were advised against it, and even Shahrukh was not sure whether it should have that scene or it should be like the Meryl Streep scene where it ends without them actually doing it.
I was in a zone of abandon at that time. I was like, I felt I had wings. I wanted to fly as a filmmaker. But when I look back, I feel like I remember very clearly, and I've said it, that when the scene was going on, I was watching it at a preview, and there was a very traditional couple watching it. And the moment Shahrukh and Rani check into the hotel in Kabhi Alvida, the lady turned to her husband and he said, "Don't worry, dream sequence hai." And because they imagined that this is not possible. In a Karan Johar film, it's not possible that this would actually transpire. At the moment they realized it was not a dream sequence, 5 minutes later they were out of their cinema halls. So I realized that, sometimes topics like this are brushed under the carpet in our society. We don't like to watch what is startling and truthful on celluloid. We like to watch virtue and morality, say the right messaging. The moment you make viewing uncomfortable, the moment you say things that hit you hard, those are the films that bother you the most, and you have extreme reactions. Kabhi Alvida had extreme reactions. I had people come and say, I hated it. The only reason you can hate it if it's the truth of your home. And it's the truth of your marriage. You can't hate that film otherwise. Or had people say, it's uncomfortable to see this film with my spouse. Because what do you say after? Oh, I love the film. What did you love about it? Or if I hated it, then why did you hate it so much? So it's basically, it was more a commentary. So the film did so much, and someone told me that it did so much better in the West because there's a culture of watching film alone. So there are men who went alone and women who went alone. But in India, we go as a couple or as a family, and it's an uncomfortable watch sometimes.
I think that's changing. I see a lot of movies on my own in a theater, and I enjoy it thoroughly. I think I see a lot of other ladies also coming and watching movies. It's changing. Thank God. There's a wonderful chapter on Shahrukh where the first time you meet him and you go with a certain baggage because you're awestruck, you expect to meet a big star and you're completely disarmed because he's so normal, he's warm, he's caring, he's very respectful towards your father. They have a relationship completely independent of...
I mean, it was. I remember the day so clearly etched in my head, like it's like it happened yesterday. I grew up with movie stars that were stalwarts, that were luminaries, that we literally looked up to, like Mr. Bachchan. You know, when he walked into the room, there was a sense of like, you know, like glory. Someone magnificent has walked in. So there was this stardom that I had realized, being a producer's son, stars were always put on a pedestal. We were always the poorer parties. We were the ones that had to kind of succumb to their stardom, look up to their full of awe, because they were the ones who made the movies happen. So I grew up feeling movie stars were like unapproachable entities. I had then lost track with the generation because I was in my college days, and I was touching base with my father's side of the business much later when he took me to meet Shahrukh to sign him for Duplicate. And I had never met somebody who was a young movie star, who was so loved at that time, and everyone wanted him in their movies, who was this animated, this conversational, this, what do I say, just this real person. So I was in shock. And the fact that he respected my father so much, the fact that he showed that respect meant the world to me, because up to that point, I felt like my father had not had the best run at the movies, you know, even with certain people and relationships. And when I saw Shahrukh give him that love, I think I fell in love with Shahrukh at that moment, because I saw the love he gave my father, and that to me meant the world. Nothing else mattered.
Lovely insight also when you talk about your father. I think that was beautiful, where you said that despite him achieving success by the time you started working together, in his head, he was still like a production person. So it was his instinct to carry the bags of stars or open car doors for them.
And which my mother went hoarse trying to tell him,
yeah.
Yash, you're a producer. You're not a production manager. You can't, you shouldn't be doing these things.
It's wonderful that you share it.
It was his instinct. He couldn't help it. He just couldn't, like, whatever. And it was like, and I, of course, was born like I was a movie star in my head. Even though I had nothing, in my head, I was always royalty. For some reason, I don't know where, my mother always said, I don't know where you came from. Because, you know, I didn't have their value system. And I was always somebody who lived beyond my means. It was because I was pampered by my father. It was, he allowed me to believe that. He really, when I was 150 kilos fat, thought I had 5 kilos of puppy weight that I should lose. He thought I was the most gorgeous looking son. Could have been a film hero, knowing very well I knew my personality would not allow me to be a lead in a Hindi film at all. But he thought he could have launched me. When we were talking about my first film, he said, "Tu thoda patla ho ja, tu kar sakta hai hero ka kaam." And I was like, at that point, I was like, how do I get love and balance it with delusion? Because, you know, my mother secretly, I think, always knew that I was not meant for certain things. But my father just loved me unabashedly.
There's also a wonderful moment that you talk about when Kajol, who you now don't have the same relationship with any longer, but maybe you will in future, when she told you that if you want to establish your, you want to assert yourself on the set, just come and shout the hell out of me. Just come and yell at me to show that you're the boss. And you were faking. I mean, you were faking it. She was faking it. But I thought that was very generous of her and very smart of her to think of that. You were young, you were nervous, she was a huge star, and she says, just come out there and shout at me.
Yeah,
and
it's true. It's what happened. It's what's in the book, as are many other things. Kajol, I think enough has been said about recently, especially when excerpts of the book have been out. So I don't want to say any more about the fact that we have great history. And I want to remember just the history that we've shared. This is a moment in that history of nearly 25 years of a friendship. And yeah, sometimes chapters end, books end, relationships end.
But yet, you talk about when you hugged Shahrukh at Deepika's party, and suddenly, whatever tension there may have been, melted away. That one hug, there was so much love that was exchanged, and it was all eliminated.
I think there was never, there are ups and downs in so many relationships, but with Shahrukh, it's, there is deep love. There's no other way of communicating the respect and love that I have for him. And I that ours will be a dynamic, and ours will be a relationship, and ours will be a connect that will be forever. It's only because my love for him has only grown over the last 2 decades. My love for his family has been so constant and consistent. And the fact that I think that their home is like a home for me in this city means a lot to me and my mother. My love for him is beyond work. My love for him and his family is beyond what he and I do professionally. It really is now a soul connect. I think we were meant to meet in this world, and I think it's because of my father that we have this connect. And we could possibly have our down days and our humongously up days, but what we cannot ever forget is the unabashed love that will remain, and the respect, more importantly, that I think has not been diminished, no matter what.
It has a lot to do with both of you being successful, very successful in your own right. You say that friendships in show business can only succeed if the two people involved are equally successful. Is there something like friendship at all in showbiz?
I've made some very strong friendships. Everyone in this room today is from my industry. My relationships define me. We're low on family. We have very few relatives that we're really connected with, me and my mom. So most of my personal connections are my family, and they're my extended family. I've made the most amazing relationships. In fact, I say this to Gauri, that I think I'm one of the reasons but I made her love people in the movies. Because when she came in, she was so reluctant to meet people because everyone comes with baggage. But some of my most deep equations and my most solid dynamics have been with people from the movies. So I think it's very unfair to say that relationships, yes, you go through ups and downs and there are always turbulent times. But I have to say that the soul and heart I've found within the fraternity and the industry has been amazing. And I will cherish those relationships for the rest of my life. They're all still there in my life. In fact, I'm a very constant person. People who've been in my life for over 2.5 decades are still there in a very strong space.
And finally, your book ends with your expressing a desire to perhaps adopt a child or have a surrogate child. And you talk about this child as your old age kind of a policy, to insurance policy in old age.
I think you have reason. I feel I have a nurturing quality in me, and I saw that most when I launched Alia, Varun, and Sid. I felt like I can't let go of them even now. Like I feel it's been nearly 5 years, and I feel no matter what they do in whatever capacity they do, when they're on screen or they're at an event or they're anywhere, I see myself staring at what they're doing, what they're saying. That shows that I actually have a sense, and even all the directors in Dharma, everyone in Dharma, to me, I'm maybe age-wise, say a decade apart from them, maybe more than that. But the emotion comes from a very strong paternal space. And I feel like I would like to take that forward. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but I feel like I would like to be a parent. I don't know in what capacity. I don't know how it's going to happen. I have no clue, and I don't have answers to those questions. But I do feel the need because I feel I have love to offer. And since it's there, and I'd like to take it forward because I feel like that paternal instinct needs to be acted upon. And I feel it very strongly. Like I feel like I have so much within me that I conserve, and I feel that love has to have a release, you know, and it's not going into a relationship. It goes abundantly to my love for my mother and my friends and all of them around me. In my company, I love everyone. And to me, I don't think any of them will realize how deeply moved I am that so many of them are here today, and what they mean to me in my life. I sometimes don't express it enough because it's within me, and I feel like that love within me needs to find a platform, and I think that platform could be a parent platform.
Karan, I wish you every success. I hope a baby does come into your life. It'll transform you. It transforms everybody who's ever had a child, and I can tell you that from experience. With 4 grandchildren now, I can tell you that with double experience.
Yes.
So, blessings all the way. Make it happen for yourself. We are very proud of you. We are very proud of the book. It's already a bestseller, and it's got its first brilliant review. So, it's a day to celebrate, and may you always remain the wonderful, caring person you are. Thank you.